What is up, world? It's your boy Tan, and you are listening to the Wonton Wealth Podcast. Here, I'm going to unravel anything and everything commercial real estate related. And more importantly, we're going to add abundant value. So if you're ready, buckle up your eardrums. Welcome back, guys. This week, I am continuing my conversation with Jomar, who is a badass in the cold storage industrial real estate space. We are looking at it from an investment perspective, so enjoy. From a tenant perspective, so outside of a new development for the particular tenant, and let's say these buildings are super old now, they're looking to relocate because some of their items are down the shitter or they got to upgrade and it's going to cost them a shit ton of money. They're looking to relocate. From the tenant's eyes, what do they look for when they're leasing a cold storage facility outside, or what amenities do they have? And outside of the stuff that we talked about, like the newer compressor, proper slabs, and proper sealing on the walls and whatnot.
So one thing that's super important are reefer plugs, right? You have these buildings, not buildings. You have these trucks that like carry cold storage, that carry, product, right? The apples need to stay at the perfect temperature in the truck, and then they need to go in the building and maintain the same temperature in the building, right? Temperature continuity. So one of the things I didn't speak about was these reefer plugs. So sometimes these reefer plugs, these reefers or these trailers are not sitting at the dock doors. They've got product in it and they're waiting to hit a dock door to follow this queue of trucks that are going in and out, right? Inbound and outbound. When that truck is sitting, right, it needs energy to maintain temperature. So you plug that trailer into a reefer plug, so while it's sitting on site, waiting to hit a dock door, you're still maintaining an unbroken cold chain even in the truck. And you'll have like sensors in that truck that'll tell you if the temperature dropped or not. So if there is a problem, you'll know where it happened in the cold chain. Actually, what's really funny? Now speaking about reefer plugs, super important because I don't think 3PLs and developers really understand how intertwined they are with a brand or with a retailer or a brand, because if something really bad happens, like someone gets sick, this is the worst thing that can happen. And that usually comes from bad handling, broken cold chains, right? Um, Salmonella. Actually, perfect example. I think with Kroger, there were salmonella in the strawberries. Where did it come from? Did it come from the supplier? Did it come from handling at the facility, at the DC? Did it come from the store? Right? Being able to trace where is the piece in the cold chain that is broken, to understand where the problem came from, super important. Hence reefer plugs, right? The reefer plug is an attempt to provide a very unbroken, very seamless cold chain. This apple's going to be sitting in 34 degrees until it ends up like as someone's snack, period, full stop, right? If it doesn't, I need to be able to look through my systems, whether using blockchain or anything like that, right? I know you're a blockchain guy, that's why I said that. So you can look within the ledger and see, where did the temperature drop, right? Oh, it happened in the truck while it was waiting to hit the dock. That's where it happened. That's why that person got sick. Because if someone gets sick, it's completely it's completely related to that retailer's brand, right? Then that brand is going to look towards its cold chain stakeholders and say, "Hey, who messed up here?" Right? Because now our brand reputation's at risk, which is more important than anything, right? There's a value. There's like, you know that, right? There's a specific value towards brand reputation. People will go to crazy lengths to maintain that reputation. And that's really delivered in the product. And so the stakeholders have a big part in that, right? Hence why if a retailer's QC gets a shipment of freight and then says, hey, this is not good, right? Like, and they shoot away, they're just protecting their brand at the end of the day. It's really that 3PL or that logistics company that didn't do their job, or the supplier who didn't do their job, right? So that's kind of I went to a spiel there, but like reefer plugs, yes, that's one thing I did talk about. That is important to a cold storage building for sure.
And it sounds like there's a shit ton of liability here. So insurance has to be fucking massive for these things, right? From the 3PL
Oh yeah,
standpoint and the manufacturer or the brand name, right?
yes, yep. It's pretty insane. There are several insurance policies. There's business interruption risk. So there's umbrella policies that can kind of cover you. But and the thing is though, when you start talking to bigger retailers, it's you just need to make sure you're on your P's and Q's. Right? I mean, you the risk reward ratio is there. You are delivering shipments to a retailer and you'll get paid very handsomely, right? There's a lot of millionaires in this space. But if you don't, the risk is very, 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 very high, right? And one thing I want to point out is that we're talking about retailers in the U.S., right? We talk about cold storage because it's a massive need. Imagine in areas where food loss is like 60%, like in places like Africa and like in like Senegal, like I was looking at their I was looking at their mango reports because I find it interesting. They lose 70% of their mango production every year because they don't have the necessary cold chain equipment, right? And then you'll have larger retailers like a Walmart or a Kroger or whatever, right? I'm not saying that they look in that specific country, but like some of them, they look to diversify their suppliers across the globe because of maritime instability. So yeah, oh my gosh, I got my supplier. I used to get my stuff from Asia. Now you got to find somewhere else to go get it, right? What if in those areas those suppliers can't meet international standards as the ones that did in Asia, right? Now,
Yeah, big
then
problem.
then you need to have like these larger companies like a Maersk or DP World, these port operators come in, build in the infrastructure there so these new suppliers can deliver to these retailers and meet those international standards. So I think cold chain in the US is super interesting. I'm in it for the long game, but I think the international landscape is even more interesting because it's so badly needed, right? So
Dude, holy shit. You're blowing my mind right now. But I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about cold storage as an investment.
yeah.
It looks like to me, just looking at the landscape, that the demand for cold storage has evolved or grown over the recent years, especially, when you have e-commerce like Amazon and then you got grocery delivery from some of these big grocers in the market. But outside
Mhm.
of that, what makes cold storage an attractive investment compared to the other types of industrial real estate, like your dry warehousing or flex space, things like that?
It really comes down to, can it be replaced? If you're building a facility specifically for a user, and let's say you've got the entitlements, you've got the zoning, you've got the permits, and then all of a sudden the project doesn't work, and you go tell that retailer, whatever, hey, you're going to have to go somewhere else to build this. That's going to take them another 18 to 24 months to replicate that exact project. So it's like when I look at projects, you look at sustainability, right? Like if I build this for this user, how many other options will they have? Right? Like you can't really get around built to suit. And then the power dynamic, if you can secure power, I mean that's a win. Now, there are a lot of cold storage buildings around the US, as I mentioned, right? There's been a huge amount of supply. A lot of that supply has been built by these kind of 3PLs, Americold and Lineage, for kind of speculative use, but big boxes, right? There are not many firms that can fill up 700,000 square foot cold storage facility speculatively. That's a big risk. You're building a massive asset with all this power and you don't have a tenant in tow. Risk. The demand, but in terms of building like built to suit assets, that's where the key is. Because once you secure power and entitlements, especially in a big city, I mean, it's the golden goose, right? I mean, they oftentimes retailers will overpay for that, right? So it's just I always look at, hey, how hard is this to replicate, timeline wise, feasibility in terms of yield, cash on cash yield in the first year. After your build, people are usually generating anywhere from like I want to say 13 to 15. That's just on the real estate. Now, if you include like operating and all that type of stuff, and you include data, which is where I really think cold storage is going to go, then it can be way upwards of that because you'll be selling data back to the user, which the user will find very, very, very helpful. So,
I love that. I want to dig on the data a little bit down the road here, but when we're looking at development in general, it's always messy with development, right? You got to work with the
yeah,
city, you got to sign a bunch of fucking papers, you got to jump through a lot of fucking hoops, and
yep,
just to get the project done in an adequate time frame, like let's say you anticipate 6 months, 8 months, a year, you always got to tack on like another 6 months behind that, right?
yep,
And then afterwards is when you, as the developer, try to figure out a way to tenant the building or the project, whether it be retail, office, etc. But like now in the cold storage world, you're adding on another layer of shit on top of that makes it even more
that's right.
complicated, right? Not
That's
just
right.
not just from the build perspective to where you got to have the compressor, you got to have a certain slab thickness, you got to have insulation, different refrigerants, right? But now you have an even smaller pool of potential tenants and or operators that you can pull from to build a suit for this project. Talk about niche. Holy shit, right?
Yeah,
But
for sure.
so let's say I wanted to get into the development space of cold storage facilities. Now I have to I'm starting from ground zero. I have to
Mm,
meet I have to find the operators. I have to find the proper location, where there are electrical capacity and people, and that are hopefully close to ports, right? To
yep.
In order to build a project
Or
like this,
people,
how do
or
I get
people, or people.
or people, but how do I how would I ever get a competitive advantage over guys that have done this over the last 50, 60, 70 years?
Couple ways, right? Obviously, location is key. So when guys are putting together cold storage developments, they'll have options on land, but they're out meeting users at the same time because in the current space, a lot of users will just buy the building from you. All you got to do, not all you got to do, but you just got to develop it. Take the development risk. Day one of the lease, boom, purchase option, right? So when folks are developing assets, right, what makes you really different are, I want to say, two to three things. A, obviously, how fast can you get power, right? Assuming location is a given, right? How fast can you get power? That's really working in direct partnership with a local utility company like a Duke Energy or something like that, or having a bridge solution until you can get power. So the utility company might say, hey, listen, I can't get you 10 megawatts until 2 years from now. How will you give them power until then? Fuel cells, gas turbines. There's like several. You can create a microgrid. There are several components, right, that can enable you to get power. So that's one avenue. The second avenue to make yourself different is, I would say, the data piece, right? Because developers are so focused on building a building and getting substantial completion that they're not thinking, hey, what if this tenant puts automation in the facility, right? Like, how can I account for sensors? How can I account for um, robotic equipment, right? How can I provide inventory management solutions that helps match their inventory with their sales forecast, right? Because, you know, nowadays, as I mentioned, users want to operate their own. So you don't have to look for the operator too much, right? They want to take control of that. They want to protect their operations and their product integrity. So they'll handle that. how do you give them all the pretty stuff that makes them think, oh wow, I didn't think of that, right? Like, oh, we have our own data analytics and our own reports, but oh wow, you have these tools already in your building. You've already got permits for these. You've already got a partnership with a sensor company that can get us, a decrease in cost of this equipment. Okay, great, right? So I find that the reason I love cold storage so much is obviously I think it's just fucking cool, but like because I love grapes and oranges and all that type of stuff. But like, but it's not only because of the cool ass and delicious grapes, but it's really how do you track this stuff, right? How do you make sure you're producing the perfect grape? How do you make sure you're solving problems? Like, for example, there's one client I was talking to the other day. They deliver pet food, right, to people's homes in New Jersey. And they're like, hey, Jomar, we have an issue with our inventory management because um, if we send the pet food to our customer too early, they have nowhere to put it in their fridge. If we send it to them too late outside the delivery window, then it's gonna rot. It's not gonna be good, right? So how do we make sure we have the right amount of inventory according to our sales forecast, which is really how much outbound are we sending every day, to make sure our building is not over capacity where we have an issue and we have to send stuff early, right? That's an inventory optimization problem, right? So that data can help with that, right? And obviously you'll sign NDAs and make sure you won't share with anyone, right? But the data module is something that you can kind of sell to other groups if you really wanted. The second problem set I was looking at recently was they do what's that company that does like the meal kits? It's like Factor 7 or Factor something.
There's Factor, there's Home Chef, there's I think Huel is one of them. Oh no, Huel is like a
I think
powder.
Factor.
Factor, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so Factor is the one, right? So, they're a client for a buddy of mine, and my buddy has this building, also in New Jersey, and he says, "Hey, Jomar, like, one of the issues he's been having is, you know, with these meal kits, they, there's rice, there's beef or chicken. What happens if you have enough chicken but you don't have enough beef, right? Oh, you're gonna take that chicken, put it in those meal kits, and give people what they didn't want? No, right? You're gonna make sure. Oh, I need to have this amount of beef on hand because this is the amount of sales I usually have. So I'm not giving them meal kits with stuff that they don't want, right? And so again, inventory management, right? What if you've got stuff coming from a supplier and it looks like shit every time it gets to your warehouse? How do you make it not look like or like how do you make sure you're protecting the product integrity, aka make sure it doesn't look like shit when it gets there, right? You gotta you gotta talk, interview the supplier, understand their processes, and start tracking how they deliver their product and how they grow their product and how they package their product, right? Because you're creating like a full chain, right? So the data part, I think, is probably besides the power, which powers the data, is probably one of the most important, interesting concepts that can really separate you from another developer. Because I can tell you right now, Americold and Lineage are not doing it. They're increasing rates, but decreasing kind of service quality, which is why users are kind of building their own and why you see so many empty cold storage sheds.
Dude, this is absolutely fascinating. Let's pull on that thread a little bit more. And from a naive person's standpoint or an ignorant person's standpoint, I was like, how much fucking data is there really? But as you were talking about this, like, holy shit, there's a fuck ton of data, from the logistics piece, from the temperature piece, from tracking these things and how they're stored, everything, pretty much everything there is in the life cycle of a product that's required to be in cold storage. So, how are the big companies right now measuring that data? How are they intaking that data? And from your perspective, you have a phenomenal idea if there's a shit ton of data like this. So, if they don't have a system to collect all this data, what else can be produced or invented in order to collect all this data and somehow utilize AI to leverage it?
Yeah, to leverage the patterns and stuff like that. So most companies will hire outside third parties to help them because what happens is that you can't just have you can have a data company, but then you have to have someone that understands inventory optimization and flow management at the same time, right? Like, okay, I get these mangoes and these cases. How do they flow to my end customer? Right? So you need to integrate all that. So to answer your question, most of them don't have an apparatus to understand the data. What can be invented are data modules, right? I put a sensor on this rack, or all on these racks. I know every time a pallet is going in or out. I know the frequency at which the product moves, right? Then you have real-time temperature monitoring. A lot of people, what they do nowadays is they go individually to every case to check the temperature of all these apples and pears, right? What if you had something in the pallet that can, once it receives the load, it says, okay, pallet's loaded. I now understand real time today what the temperature is of this pallet today, right? No, those pallets are kind of expensive. Won't lie, right? Like wooden pallets, probably like $3. This pallet I'm talking about, it's like $20. If you're shipping a million pallets, that makes a big difference, right? So
Yeah.
it's a lot, right? But there are ways you can have a mix of pallets and a mix of temperature readers and things like that, right? So there's different way, and even the packaging itself, which is really fundamental. So an innovator can come up with innovative packaging. They can come up with pallets that have embedded like sensors, or they can create sensors that you can just put on racking to understand the frequency of which at which the freight moves.
But the sensors, wouldn't those have to be developed, or are they already in existence?
No, they're already existence. I think the proprietary part about this is not so much the hardware, it's the software. How is the data
Oh,
interpreted? What
got it.
patterns can be created? And then adaptive AI is really where shit goes fucking through the roof, because you get stuff from a supplier, let's say it's perfect, and then it gets in the facility and it becomes not perfect. Now the AI is going to tell you, oh, these apples are bad. Here's what you should do to fix it. If you have automation, the automation can fix that process itself. For example, so let's say all these problems are originating from the supplier, right? And then by the time the fruit gets to the DC, it gets to the DC and then it gets to the retailer. By the time it gets to the retailer's like, I can't do anything with this. I'm gonna have to throw this away, and now my shelf is gonna be empty. I'm not gonna have any apples. The cost of me not having apples is more than me having apples and it's sitting there for a little bit, right?
Wow.
So what if there was AI in the DC that said, "Hey, you just got a batch of bad apples. I'm telling you before it gets to you, saving transportation costs and all that bullshit downtime, right? I've got these bad apples. I'm gonna donate. I'm gonna sell this to the third market. I'm trying to get 90 cents or 80 cents on the dollar. Save you money without you even telling me anything. I'm gonna make sure you get perfect apples every time. Every time. I don't have to waste time. You get bad apples, then you have to send it back, and then you have to wait. No, I'm gonna tell you at the facility level when you get it. Boom, straight full cold chain, right? So that's the type of stuff I think is like super cool with data.
That's incredible. I We should definitely talk offline about the data and the AI stuff because I'm developing software right now that's commercial real estate related. So
Nice.
eventually, I think we could have some collaboration here that fits in some way, shape, or form. But outside of that, are you seeing any other badass technology out there that's either already in being utilized or in current production that helps modernize cold storage facilities or just any innovations out there that are just completely changing the game?
Yes, there's a lot of real-time temperature monitoring softwares out there, but I think the problem is like you're telling me what to do. I don't want you to tell me what to do. I want you to just go do it, right? This is where adaptive AI comes in. Like, there's so many companies that do real time. Emerson produces sensors. They have real time temperature monitoring, even for pharmaceuticals. But like, I don't want to intervene in the process. I want AI to have this like 0% fail rate and just give me perfect shit all the time, right? So to answer your question, Yes, there are many technologies out there. They're very innovative, super cool. A lot of blockchain technologies um, out there as well because they produce that ledger that cannot be tampered with.
Yep.
Um, so that they got some really cool stuff on the market. They really do. Um, but at the end of the day, it's about adaptive AI with food.
Love
I
it.
mean, it's the end game for sure.
So if you and I were to partner in developing a cold storage facility for somebody, like, whatever player, major player out there, where should I be looking?
I would say pretty much every major market. I would stay away from California for many reasons. Um, but I would look at Charlotte, Raleigh. Um, I would take a look at Atlanta all day because they're pretty easy to work with. Houston to a degree because they have amazing access to power. Um, I would say probably, actually, not probably, Phoenix because it's really hot.
Yeah.
Las Vegas, but Las Vegas is super supply constrained. I don't know if we'll find any land there. But those markets
Yeah.
I would say are kind of team busting at the seams.
Okay. So outside of the power stuff, how much land should I be looking for? 10 acres, 20 acres?
I would say, yeah, 10 to 15 is pretty good. You can build something sizable, for sure.
Wow. Okay. I got to look at those markets. So if anybody listening is looking for land and shit that are in those markets that fits the mold of what Jamar is saying, send it to us. We would love to do something like this. It makes me want to invest in, just talking to you, Jamar, just makes me want to invest in cold storage like today.
Yeah, I
But
love the stuff. I mean, it's awesome.
okay, so the last question I had for you would be, if you have a blank check and you got no budget constraints, nothing like that, and you can build pretty much anywhere, if you could design the ultimate cold storage facility, what would it look like?
It would not have a human in it.
Completely AI driven.
All AI, all automation. Wouldn't have a single human. Maybe like one engineer, and I'd be like 20 minutes outside a major city
Dude,
all day.
that would be. So, I mean, I feel like we're not so far off of that, right? Because now we're seeing Amazon being the biggest one. They have robots in there doing sorting and shit.
Yep.
So any of these big warehouse players that are doing e-commerce delivery services, they're already utilizing tech in some way, shape, or form. And I'm sure AI is the next big thing, right? It already
Yeah.
is, but they're going to utilize AI in order to make things more efficient. So within the cold storage space, I guarantee it that it's gonna be there in the next, I don't know, 5 years, maybe 10 years, right?
Sure. For sure. Yeah, I think Mexico is going to do really well as well. I love U.S. cold storage. Don't get me wrong, but the international landscape, it's just like folks in these countries don't have enough water, let alone cold storage. And you have all these retailers looking in international markets because maritime instability. So and when I say Mexico, I mean like Laredo and places like that. Um, Sorry that I jumped on it, but I just think
Yeah.
that part of the market, that end game, is just super interesting. Um, so yeah,
No, I love that. This was a super badass episode. I learned a fuck ton. I got to get you back on and just, learn a little bit more about this stuff because a lot of it kind of flows over my head. But why don't you give a handoff to the people that are listening on how they would be able to find you? And let's say if they had deals, how do they send them to you?
yeah. So I'm super easy to find on LinkedIn. Um, you can find me. I mean, my email is my first name, last name at iCloud.com. So Jomar Benoit at iCloud.com. I'm always approachable, always happy to talk and speak about all things cold chain. I'll recommend a couple books. There's a really like so many good books out there coming out on cold chain. So happy to speak with anyone, partner with anyone. So I'm open book. So LinkedIn and email is the best way to get in touch.
And what were those books?
Geez, there's one called uh the history of food. I will get you the name of the author. I'm forgetting at the moment. Ah, yes, it's called Frostbite. How refrigeration changed our food, our planet, and ourselves, by Nicola Twiley. This, and she has a also she has a podcast called Gastropod, where she like digs into like how did quinoa come about, and bananas and apples, and I find that cool. So
Oh my god, I gotta get my hands on that book. I love food, so it'll probably be a very interesting read. Nonetheless, brother man, I fucking appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time today. You've blown all of our minds. Once again, I'm gonna get you back on and we can talk more about food because once again, I love food.
for sure, for sure.
And that's a wrap. If you've made it this far, that means you've listened to the entire episode, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And if you've learned something or found it useful, share it with one of your homies. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm pretty active on IG. My handle is pro_TANH. Reach out, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, or what you want to hear about in the future. I'm here to tailor this to you. Until next time.